The night sky above Earth was quiet, almost too quiet, a silence that hung heavy, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Humans had known for months that an alien race, the ones who had claimed dominion over entire star systems, were planning something catastrophic. Rumors had circulated that they were moving in for an invasion. No one knew when, but everyone feared it was only a matter of time. John was just another person, going about his life in a small city near the coast. He worked as a mechanic, fixing the machines that kept the world running, from air conditioning units to the massive machines that powered factories. To him, the war was something distant, a concern for the leaders of Earth, not for someone like him. But that night, something would change. It was a typical evening, the kind where the sky turned from soft orange to dark blue as the day gave way to night. John was finishing up the last of his work for the day, wiping his hands on a rag. His shop was tucked away in a quiet corner of the city, far from the bustle of downtown. There was no reason for anyone to be out here at this hour, especially not in the middle of a global crisis. But then, as if the universe had decided to throw him a curveball, he saw it. A light streaked across the sky, bright and fast. It wasn't like anything he had ever seen. It wasn't a shooting star, nor was it the controlled flight of a human aircraft. No, this was something much different. Something alien. Before John could fully comprehend what he was seeing, the light fell to earth with a sound like thunder. He rushed outside, his heart pounding in his chest, and looked up. In the distance, near a field just beyond the city limits, the ground glowed faintly. He didn't know what it was, but his instincts told him it was important. And then, as if compelled by an unseen force, he found himself walking toward it. The night was cold, and the wind whipped through the trees. As John got closer, he could see a faint outline on the horizon. The glow came from a craft that had crashed, its twisted metal still warm to the touch. The wreckage was unlike anything he had seen before, sleek and almost organic in design, as though it had been grown rather than built. The air smelled strange, metallic and heavy, like something unnatural had happened here. John hesitated for only a moment. His feet moved before his mind could catch up. He crossed the field, careful, to avoid the scattered debris. His eyes fixed on the wreckage, but then they shifted to something even more surprising. A figure, small and hunched, was crawling from the wreckage. At first, John thought it might be another survivor from the crash, but as the figure stood, he realized it was something else entirely. The figure was humanoid, but there was something unmistakably alien about her. Her skin shimmered in the moonlight, a pale blue with hints of purple. Her features were delicate but defined, with a small nose and large, expressive eyes. She had pointed ears, like those in the myths of old Earth tales. And yet, despite the strange beauty of her, she seemed vulnerable, like a creature far from home, lost and afraid. John stopped in his tracks. His heart skipped a beat. It was her eyes that struck him first, eyes that seemed to hold a world of sorrow, pain, and hope, all at once. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she spoke, her voice soft and strained. "Please, help me," she whispered, barely audible in the cold night air. John didn't know why, but he felt an overwhelming urge to help her. Maybe it was the desperation in her voice, or perhaps it was the strange pull he felt toward her, as if their fates were connected. Despite the chaos he knew was unfolding in the world, he found himself stepping closer, his mind racing with questions. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice shaky. "What happened?" The alien woman struggled to keep her balance. Her legs wobbled beneath her, and she seemed to be in pain. John rushed forward to catch her before she fell, instinctively reaching out and supporting her with one arm. She was light, but there was an undeniable strength in her form. Despite her frailty, she radiated an energy that he couldn't explain. "I am not like them," she said, her voice trembling. "I came to warn you, to warn humanity." John's brow furrowed. "Warn us? From what?" She took a deep breath, her eyes locking onto his. For a moment she seemed to gather herself, standing straighter. "From them," she said. "The ones you've been hearing about. The ones who want to destroy everything you know. The words hit John like a punch to the gut. He had heard the rumors, the alien invaders who had crushed entire civilizations, their fleets approaching Earth with an unmistakable purpose. But hearing it from this woman, this stranger, made it all too real. I don't understand, he said, his voice faltering. What are you talking about? Who are they? Her eyes glistened with something that looked almost like regret. They are my people, she said, but I don't belong with them. They plan to end your kind, to wipe Earth from existence, and I risked everything to stop them. John took a step back, still trying to make sense of what she was saying. His mind was reeling, trying to process the weight of her words. It was hard to believe, yet there she was, standing in front of him, this alien woman who had risked her life to warn him. Why would you risk your life for us? He asked, his voice filled with confusion and awe. Because you have something. My people have forgotten, she said softly. Hope. You fight for survival, for freedom. And I can't let that die. The alien woman's words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. John didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. His life had just changed forever, and somehow he knew that her journey was about to become his as well. John stood frozen, his mind struggling to comprehend what he had just heard. The woman, no, the alien, was standing in front of him, her pale blue skin shimmering softly in the moonlight. Her eyes were full of sorrow, and her words, though quiet, carried a weight that felt impossible to ignore. You're saying, your people are coming to destroy Earth? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He could hardly believe it, but the way she had spoken, the urgency in her tone, made him feel that she wasn't lying. It was too serious, too real to be a trick. She nodded slowly, her eyes glistening with something close to sadness. Yes, she said, her voice steady despite the vulnerability that showed in her every movement. They are coming, and they will not stop until humanity is wiped from the stars. John's heart raced in his chest. He thought about the news reports, the rumors that had spread across Earth about alien forces gathering in the far reaches of space, preparing for war. He'd heard the stories of destruction, of entire civilizations that had been erased without a trace. But it had always seemed distant, something that would never affect his small, quiet life. Now it felt like the darkness was closing in. His world was not as safe as he had once believed. But why are you helping us? He asked, the question slipping out before he could stop it. Why would you risk your life to warn us? The alien woman's gaze softened, but there was a deep pain in her eyes. She took a slow, measured step closer to John. Her strength seemed to falter as she moved, and John instinctively reached out to steady her. She didn't pull away, and for a brief moment their eyes locked. She trusted him, he realized, even though they had only just met. I'm not like them, she said quietly. My people, they have forgotten what it means to fight for something other than power. They have become rulers, conquerors. They don't care about the lives they destroy in their path. But I see things differently. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I've seen what humanity has fought for. Freedom, family, love, things my people have lost. John was silent as she spoke. Her words stirred something deep inside him, a part of him that had always believed in fighting for what was right. He had always felt the weight of responsibility, even in his small everyday life. But this was something far greater than he could have ever imagined. I had no choice but to leave, she continued, her voice growing quieter. I was one of them. But I couldn't live with the destruction they planned. I couldn't live with the thought of erasing everything, of destroying the very thing that makes life worth living, and so I ran. I risked everything to come here to warn your people, to help you stop them before it's too late. John shook his head, struggling to process the gravity of the situation. But what do we do? How can we stop them? They're an entire empire, and we're just humans. We don't have the power to stop an empire. The alien woman's expression darkened, her eyes flashing with determination. You underestimate yourselves, human, she said, her voice firm. You have something my people lost long ago. You have resilience. You have heart. And that is the one thing that will be their downfall. She stepped back slightly, her gaze fixed on the stars above, as if she could see through the darkness to some distant place. The empire I fled from has created weapons capable of destroying entire planets. Their armies are vast, their fleets unstoppable. But there is a way to stop them. John's mind raced, trying to catch up with the rapid flow of information. What do we need to do? She turned back to him, her expression fierce. There's a facility, a secret base on a distant world. That is where they control the weapons they intend to use against your planet. But it's not just any facility. It's a place I once worked. I know its secrets. I know its weaknesses. John felt a chill run down his spine. A base? On another planet? Yes, she said, nodding. And only someone with the right knowledge can disable it. The weapon is set to destroy Earth, but I sabotaged its system. However, the Empire will be sending reinforcements to reactivate it soon. Time is running out. He stared at her in disbelief. You sabotaged the weapon? She nodded again, but there was a certain sadness in her gaze. Yes, but it's not enough. I can't do this alone. I need your help. John was silent for a long moment. His mind was spinning with everything she had told him, but one thing stood out above all else. She had come here to stop her own people, not for her own safety, but for the safety of humanity. She had risked everything for them. For him. Why me? He asked softly. Why me? I'm just a mechanic. I'm not a soldier. I don't have the skills to fight an entire empire. The alien woman gave him a small, sad smile. Because you are human, she said, her voice gentle but certain. You have something my people have lost. A reason to fight. A reason to live. John's heart pounded in his chest. He didn't know what to think, what to believe. Everything was changing so fast. But as he looked into her eyes, he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't ignore what she was asking. He couldn't turn away from the threat to humanity, not when it was right in front of him. All right, he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I'll help you, but we need a plan. We can't just rush into this blindly. She nodded, and for the first time a flicker of hope appeared in her eyes. I knew I could count on you. Together they would face the Empire and the weapon that threatened Earth. And though they didn't know what would happen next, they knew one thing. The battle for humanity's future had just begun. John sat quietly on the edge of the old wooden table, his mind racing. The alien woman who had come from the stars to warn him stood by the window, gazing out into the night sky. The stars were distant, cold and silent, but in that silence, John could hear the weight of what she had just told him. Her name was Lyra, and though she had not told him much about her past, her determination spoke louder than anything else. She was no ordinary alien. She was a rebel, someone who had risked everything to stop a cruel empire from destroying everything humanity had worked for. You said there's a way to stop them, John finally said, breaking the silence. What is it? How do we stop them before it's too late? Lyra turned to face him, her deep blue eyes filled with both sadness and hope. There is a facility, she began, a secret base hidden on a desolate planet. That is where the Empire's weapons are controlled. If we destroy it, we can prevent the attack on Earth. John leaned forward, his heart pounding. A base? How are we supposed to get there? We're talking about an entire Empire's secret weapon. How do we even find it? Lyra smiled faintly. I know where it is. I was once part of the Empire's inner circle. I worked on their weapons program, and I know the location of their most important facility. It's hidden on a planet far from Earth, where no one would think to look. But it's not just a facility. It's a stronghold. Guarded by fleets of soldiers, drones, and advanced defense systems. John took a deep breath. You worked for them? How did you get out? The alien woman's expression darkened, and for a moment, John saw the weight of the burden she carried. I didn't want to be part of what they were doing. I couldn't stand by and watch entire civilizations get destroyed. The final straw came when they planned to attack Earth. That was when I made my decision. Her voice grew softer, almost a whisper. I was one of the few who saw what my people had become, but I couldn't stop them alone. So, I ran. And now, I'm asking you to help me stop them. John swallowed hard, the reality of the situation sinking in. So we go to this planet, and we destroy their base, he asked. It sounded simple, but deep down, he knew it was far from it. Lyra nodded. Yes, but it's not that simple. The facility is built into the planet's core. It's designed to withstand attacks, and the weapons stored there are powerful enough to obliterate entire cities. I sabotage their system, but it's only a temporary fix. The Empire will send reinforcements soon, and if they reactivate the weapons, it will be too late. John stood up, pacing the small room. He couldn't stop, thinking about the stakes. The fate of humanity rested in his hands and in Lyra's. He was no soldier, no warrior. He was just a mechanic who had gotten caught in a war that wasn't his own. But as he looked at her, this alien woman who had risked everything for a world that wasn't even hers, he realized that he couldn't turn his back. He had to try. All right, John said, his voice steady though his heart was still racing. We'll need a plan. We can't just walk in there blindly. If what you say is true, this is going to be the hardest thing we've ever done. Lyra nodded, grateful for his determination. I have a plan, but it's risky. We will need to get past the Empire's defenses, and we'll need to do it quickly. The longer we wait, the more likely they are to reactivate the weapons. John looked at her, the weight of the decision still pressing on his chest. What do we do first? We'll need to gather supplies. I know a place where we can get the equipment we need. We'll need special tools to get through the security systems, but the real challenge will be getting past the Empire's forces guarding the facility. John thought for a moment, his mind working. And once we're there? Once we're inside, Lyra said, we'll need to disable the weapon. The control center is at the heart of the base. If we destroy the central core, the weapons will be rendered useless, but it's heavily guarded. I'll need you to trust me. I know how to get past their security. I can guide you. John exhaled slowly, still feeling the weight of it all. The mission sounded impossible, but there was no turning back. Humanity's future was on the line. He looked at Lyra, the alien, who had come to him for help and made a decision. He wasn't going to let her down. I'm with you, he said firmly. Let's do this. Lyra's expression softened, and for the first time, a small smile crossed her lips. Thank you, John. I knew I could count on you. But remember, this won't be easy. The Empire has no mercy. We'll need to stay one step ahead at all times. John nodded. I get it, but we have one thing they don't have. Lyra raised an eyebrow. What's that? Hope, John replied, his voice steady. And we'll use it to fight for our future. Lyra's eyes softened as she gazed at him, a glimmer of hope in her expression. She had made the right choice in trusting him. Together they would face the impossible, and somehow they would win. The night was cold as John and Lyra prepared to leave Earth behind. The small workshop that had once been John's safe haven now felt too small, too limiting. There was a vast universe out there, full of danger and uncertainty, and the two of them were about to journey into the unknown to stop a threat that could destroy everything. Lyra had made the arrangements. She had a contact, an old ally who could help them acquire the supplies they needed. They had no time to waste. The Empire's forces were already moving, and every minute spent on Earth brought them closer to disaster. John looked at Lyra as she packed a bag with tools and weapons. Despite her calm demeanor, he could see the flicker of fear in her eyes, a fear that matched his own. They both knew the mission would be dangerous, probably the most dangerous thing either of them had ever done. Are you sure about this? John asked. I mean, we're heading into the heart of enemy territory. No one has ever done anything like this before. Lyra paused, glancing over at him. There was a long silence. Then she nodded. I've been to the facility before. I know how it's set up, what defenses they have. But there's no guarantee it'll go according to plan. We can only hope that we can outsmart them. John tightened his grip on the straps of his bag. He wasn't a soldier, but he had always been good with his hands. His knowledge of machines and technology was going to be crucial on this mission. Still, as they walked toward the hidden transport that would take them off Earth, he felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. Lyra led the way, her steps sure and confident. They arrived at a secluded warehouse on the edge of the city, where a sleek, unmarked ship waited for them. The transport was nothing like the massive, intimidating ships they had seen in the news. It was small, built for speed and stealth, a perfect vehicle for a covert mission. John climbed into the ship, still trying to wrap his mind around the fact that he was leaving Earth behind. A part of him couldn't believe it. He was about to travel to another planet, a place he had only seen in movies and read about in books, but now it was real. He was about to face a threat that could end humanity's existence. "Are you ready?" Lyra's voice pulled him from his thoughts. He nodded, though a small part of him hesitated. "As ready as I'll ever be." The ship's engines hummed to life, and before long they were soaring above Earth, heading toward the vast emptiness of space. The view from the cockpit was breathtaking. The blue and green of Earth slowly faded as they sped further from home, leaving behind the planet that had been his entire world. As they passed through the atmosphere, Lyra adjusted the controls, setting a course for the distant planet where the Empire's weapons were housed. The journey would take several hours, and as they flew through the stars, John couldn't help but ask more questions. "What's it like? Where we're going, I mean?" Lyra turned her head slightly, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the control panel. "The planet is desolate, barren. It's where the Empire built their most secret facilities, far away from prying eyes. No one goes there unless they have to." John couldn't hide his curiosity. "And you used to work there?" "I did," she said, her voice tight. "I worked in the facility's weapons division. I was responsible for overseeing the development of their weapons of mass destruction." John's brow furrowed. "You had to help build those things?" Lyra's expression hardened. "I didn't have a choice. But when I realized what they were really doing, what they planned to do to Earth, I knew I had to stop them. So I made the choice to leave, to risk everything." John's mind raced as he thought about how much Lyra had given up to be here, to trust him. He couldn't help but admire her strength. She had walked away from everything she had known, from her people, her life, and her past, all for the sake of a planet she had never visited before. They spent the rest of the journey in silence, each lost in their thoughts. The vastness of space outside the ship was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. There was nothing out there but the cold void, and the small ship that carried them toward their uncertain fate. Hours later, as the distant planet came into view, John could feel his nerves starting to rise. It was so different from Earth. The planet's surface was a dark, barren desert, marked only by craters and jagged mountain ranges. Nothing alive seemed to exist there. And yet John knew that beneath that desolate surface the Empire had built their weapon. "There it is," Lyra said quietly, pointing toward a looming structure in the distance. "The facility is buried deep within those mountains. We'll need to land close, but not too close. We can't afford to be seen." John's heart raced as the ship descended, slowly cutting through the thick atmosphere of the alien world. The ground below looked rough, unforgiving. The only sounds were the hum of the engines and the occasional beep of the ship's control panel. "Are you sure we can do this?" John asked, a trace of doubt creeping into his voice. Lyra's gaze was steady, her eyes fixed on the planet below. "We have no choice. We do this, or Earth will fall." The ship touched down softly, and John felt his heart pounding in his chest. This was it. There was no turning back now. As he and Lyra exited the ship, the cold air of the alien world hit him like a slap. The landscape stretched out before them, barren and lifeless, but the threat they faced was all too real. "Stay close," Lyra said. "We don't have much time." John nodded, following her as she led the way toward the entrance of the facility. The mission ahead would be dangerous, but they had no other option. The fate of Earth rested in their hands, and they were determined to stop the Empire before it was too late. The winds howled through the Rocky Mountains, carrying the scent of dust and something unfamiliar. John could feel the chill of the alien planet seeping into his bones, but it was the cold weight of what they were about to do that made him shiver. The facility loomed ahead, its massive, dark silhouette cutting into the sky like a jagged wound in the landscape. They had made it this far, but John couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking straight into a trap. It felt like every step they took was drawing them closer to something that had been waiting for them, something they didn't fully understand. Lyra was ahead of him, her movements quick and efficient, but John could sense her unease. She had grown quieter, more focused as they approached the entrance to the facility. The plan had been simple in theory: infiltrate the base, disable the weapon, and leave before the Empire's forces could react. But nothing ever went according to plan, especially not when the stakes were this high. They crouched behind a rocky outcrop hidden from view by the natural landscape. The entrance to the facility was a massive steel door set into the side of a mountain. There were guards nearby, alien soldiers who moved with the practiced ease of those who had spent years in battle. They were dangerous, and the odds were stacked against them. John turned to Lyra. "How do we get past them?" She was scanning the area, her eyes sharp, taking in every detail. "We wait for the patrol to move. They're predictable. Once we're inside, we'll need to disable the security systems and make our way to the core. But we have to be quick." John nodded, trying to calm his racing heart. They didn't have much time, but they had to make it count. As they waited in silence, he kept thinking back to the conversation they had before leaving Earth. Lyra had risked everything to warn humanity, to stop her own people. He knew she had already given up so much: her position, her life, and her people. And now, they were here, standing at the edge of a battle that could determine the fate of the entire galaxy. Minutes passed, and the guards moved into position, leaving the entrance momentarily unguarded. Lyra gave him a quick nod, signaling that it was time. They moved swiftly, slipping through the shadows, making their way toward the door. John's heart beat in his ears as they approached the facility's entrance. Lyra was ahead, her hand moving expertly over the security panel, entering a code that John didn't understand. The door clicked open with a quiet hiss, revealing the dark interior of the base. Without a word, they slipped inside. The facility was vast, its cold metal walls stretching as far as John could see. It was eerily quiet, except for the low hum of the power systems and the occasional beep of distant machinery. This place was a fortress, designed to withstand attacks. The walls were reinforced, the corridors narrow, and the air felt stale, as if it had been trapped here for years. "We're in," Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible. "Stay close." They moved deeper into the facility, carefully avoiding any patrols that might be lurking in the hallways. The further they went, the more they could feel the oppressive atmosphere of the place. It was like walking through a tomb, cold, lifeless, and full of secrets. As they reached the central chamber, something caught John's eye, a flicker of movement. He turned just in time to see a shadow dart across the corridor, disappearing into an adjacent room. His instincts kicked in and he motioned for Lyra to stop. "Did you see that?" he asked, his voice low. Lyra nodded. "Stay here," she said. "I'll check it out." She moved with the speed and grace of someone who had spent years evading enemies, slipping into the shadows with barely a sound. John waited, his hand hovering over the weapon he'd taken with him. He tried to steady his breath, but something didn't feel right. The silence in the facility was suffocating. Moments later, Lyra returned, her face pale. "It's a trap," she said, her voice strained. "The Empire knew we were coming. They've activated the security measures. We're surrounded." John's stomach dropped. "What do we do now?" Lyra's eyes flashed with determination. "We finish this. We get to the core and destroy the weapon. If we don't, Earth is done for. They moved quickly now, racing through the facility, knowing that every second counted. The sound of footsteps behind them told them they were being pursued. The Empire's soldiers were closing in, and their chances of escape were slipping away as they reached the central control room. They were confronted by a group of heavily armed soldiers. The room was illuminated by harsh white lights, and the walls were lined with screens displaying the facility's status. But there was no time to admire the view. The soldiers were already raising their weapons, their faces unreadable behind their helmets. Lyra, one of the soldiers said, his voice cold and mechanical. "You've betrayed us." Lyra's eyes narrowed, her hand resting on the weapon at her side. "I didn't betray anyone," she said, her voice low and steady. "I'm stopping you from destroying everything." The tension in the room was palpable. John could feel the weight of the moment, the realization that they were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. But then something unexpected happened. One of the soldiers, a woman with a scar running down her cheek, stepped forward. She looked at Lyra with a mixture of disbelief and sadness. "You were once one of us," she said softly. "How could you turn your back on your own people?" Lyra's expression softened for a brief moment. "I didn't turn my back," she said quietly. "I woke up." Before anyone could react, Lyra drew her weapon, firing in one swift motion. The room erupted in chaos as John dove for cover, his heart pounding in his chest. The soldiers returned fire, and for a moment the entire facility felt like it was shaking. But in the midst of the battle, John saw something that made his heart stop. Lyra was facing the enemy, her back turned to him, and in that moment, he realized what had been hidden from him all along. Lyra had not just been an ally. She had been a traitor to her own people, but now she was the one who had become their last hope. The sound of gunfire echoed through the facility, a constant, terrifying reminder of how close they were to failure. John crouched behind a row of metal crates, his heart racing as the chaos unfolded around him. He could hear Lyra's voice, calm, but filled with urgency, as she shouted orders to the others in the room. The enemy soldiers had cornered them, but they hadn't been able to disable the weapon yet. Not yet. John's mind was spinning. How had things gone so wrong so quickly? They had come this far, and now, surrounded by armed soldiers, the mission was slipping through their fingers. He gripped his weapon tighter, knowing that every second mattered. He could see Lyra, her face set in determination as she fired back at the soldiers who were closing in on them. She was fearless, but even she couldn't fight an entire army, alone. "Lyra," John called out, trying to make himself heard over the gunfire. "We need to get to the core. Now." Lyra glanced over her shoulder, her face pale but focused. She nodded at him, then turned to the others. "Cover him!" she shouted. Without a second thought, she moved with a speed and precision that left John in awe. She ducked behind cover and fired a few more shots, giving John the opening he needed. "Let's go!" John yelled, sprinting forward. His legs burned as he ran, but there was no time to slow down. The fate of Earth was hanging by a thread, and he couldn't afford to waste another moment. The path to the core was long and treacherous, but they had no choice but to push forward. John and Lyra led the way, their weapons drawn as they cleared the facility of any remaining guards. The halls were narrow and filled with shadows, but there was something about the place that made John feel like he was walking through a graveyard. It felt like everything around him was dead. Every wall, every door, every person. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were in the heart of something far greater than they could understand. "We're almost there," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the tension that filled the air. "Keep moving." They reached the entrance to the control room where the weapons core was housed. The door was massive, reinforced with metal and thick security locks. John knew it wouldn't be easy to get through, but they had no time to waste. He could hear the soldiers' footsteps getting closer. Every second counted. Lyra moved quickly, typing in a code on the control panel beside the door. "I've been here before," she said. "I know the system." The door clicked, open with a hiss, and they rushed inside. The room was sterile and cold, filled with large computers and control panels. The heart of the weapon was a massive glowing core at the center of the room. It pulsed with energy, its bright lights casting shadows across the floor. John's eyes widened as he saw it, the weapon that could destroy Earth in an instant. He had seen pictures of weapons like it before, but nothing could prepare him for the reality of what he was facing. It was like staring at the heart of a machine that could bring the end of everything. The weapon wasn't just powerful, it was terrifying. Lyra moved quickly, her hands flying over the control panels as she worked to disable the core. "We need to disable the power grid," she said, her voice calm despite the urgency. "Once we cut the power, the core will go dark, but we need to act fast." John glanced around the room, his mind racing. He could hear the soldiers coming, closer, their footsteps growing louder with every passing second. They wouldn't have much time before the door was breached. He grabbed the weapon from his side and aimed it at the control panels, ready to fight if it came to that. "Do you need help?" he asked, his voice tense. Lyra didn't look up from the panel as she worked. "Just keep an eye on the door. I'm almost there." John nodded, his fingers gripping the handle of his weapon as he turned to face the door. His heart pounded in, his chest and his mind was filled with thoughts of what would happen if they failed. Earth was counting on them. Humanity was counting on them, and the thought of letting it all slip away was almost too much to bear. Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts. "Done," she shouted. John turned just in time to see the glowing core flicker and dim. The room seemed to sigh in relief as the weapon powered down. But just as quickly the sound of alarms filled the air, signaling that the Empire had detected their presence. The facility was on lockdown. "They know we're here," Lyra said, her face grim. "We need to get out of here now." John didn't hesitate. They couldn't afford to stay any longer. They had done what they came to do, now it was time to run. The door behind them slammed open and a group of soldiers stormed into the room. There was no time to think, no time to plan. It was fight or flight, and there was only one choice. Lyra moved first, drawing her weapon and taking down two of the soldiers with precise shots. John followed suit, firing at the others as they rushed into the room. It was chaos, pure and simple. The air was filled with the sound of gunfire and the smell of smoke. John's heart raced, but he kept moving, ducking behind cover and firing as fast as he could. Lyra was beside him, her movements a blur as she dispatched more of the soldiers. But John could see the strain on her face. She was running low on ammunition and the soldiers were relentless. "The enemy wasn't giving up. We have to get back to the ship," Lyra shouted, her voice urgent. "Now!" John nodded, his mind focused on the exit. The facility was falling apart around them and the soldiers were closing in. There was no time to waste. The only thing that mattered now was getting out alive. They fought their way through the facility, cutting through the remaining guards as they moved toward the exit. But the weight of the situation was heavy. With every step they took, the odds of survival grew slimmer. The Empire's forces were vast and their enemies had no mercy. But John and Lyra were determined. They had come this far, and they wouldn't let everything fall apart now. Humanity's future depended on them. They reached the ship, and without a moment's hesitation, they boarded. The engines roared to life as they soared away from the facility, the sound of the explosion from the facility's self-destruct system echoing behind them. But as the stars stretched out before them, John realized one thing: the battle for Earth had only just begun. The stars outside John's heart sank. He had hoped that disabling the weapon would be enough, that it would send a clear message to the Empire. But Lyra's words made him realize that they had only scratched the surface of the problem. The war wasn't over. The real fight was still ahead of them, so what now? John asked, his voice laced with uncertainty. What do we do next? Lyra was silent for a moment, as if weighing the choices before her. Finally she spoke, her voice calm but resolute. We fight. We can't stop now. If we do, everything we've worked for will be for nothing. We need to warn Earth, rally the people, prepare them for what's coming. John nodded, though a part of him still felt the weight of their exhaustion. He had never imagined that this would be his life, that he would be caught up in an intergalactic war, fighting alongside an alien rebel to protect his home. But now, more than ever, he understood the stakes. Earth's survival depended on the choices they made from this point forward. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said, his voice firm. "We'll fight together." Lyra's eyes softened at his words. "I didn't come here just to warn you. I came here to help you. You don't have to do this alone." John turned to face her, the bond between them growing stronger with every passing moment. It wasn't just about saving Earth anymore. It was about something deeper, about the trust they had built, about standing together against a threat that was far greater than anything they had ever imagined. "Thank you," John said quietly. "I don't know if I would have made it this far without you." Lyra smiled faintly. "We're in this together. That's what matters." The ship continued its journey through space, the silence between them comfortable for the first time in what felt like forever. There was still so much left to do. The Empire was not going to give up easily, and they had no illusions about what lay ahead. But for the first time since this all began, John felt a glimmer of hope. They had stopped the weapon. They had saved Earth. And together, they would keep fighting to ensure that the Empire would never have the chance to destroy it. As they approached the safety of an Alliance base on the edge of the galaxy, John felt a sense of determination settle in his chest. This was just the beginning. The fight was far from over, but now they had a chance. "I think Earth has a fighting chance," John said, his voice filled with quiet confidence. "And we're going to make sure it survives." Lyra nodded, her expression resolute. "We will. Together." And so, as they flew toward the unknown, both of them understood one thing. No matter the obstacles they would face, no matter how impossible the odds seemed, they would keep fighting. For Earth, for humanity, for the future. The journey wasn't over yet, but together they would ensure that it was one worth fighting for.